We left off last time talking about Congress, okay? And the conversation we're having is actually going to be in kind of this, okay? Congress. What does Congress do? Congress makes what? Laws. They are the legislative branch of the government, okay? Now, in the great state of Texas, we've got Congress here too, don't we? And we have a Senate and a House, okay? So it's very similar to the United States form of government, in which it's bicameral. The bicameral nature of our federal government is we've got a Senate, the upper chamber, and we got the legislative branch, the lower chamber, called the House of Representatives. And the House of Representatives, they have the Speaker of the House. The Speaker of the House currently, her name is, can anybody tell me? Nancy Pelosi. All right. And she is a Democrat. Why is she the Speaker of the House? Well, she's the Speaker of the House because when they vote on the Speaker of the House, technically, I guess you could somehow get a Republican speaker, but you're not gonna. It's usually the majority party votes for their person, and the minority party, might vote for theirs, but it turns out on straight party lines, that the majority wins, and so you're gonna get, the Democrat in this case, because they have the majority of people in the House. They don't hold a great majority right now. And in this last election, a lot of Democratic seats were lost, which brought it a lot closer, okay? So it's a very important thing, though, in the House, okay? Because the House has a lot of power. And like I said, to be a congressman, it's a 2-year thing, 2-year term. You're up for election every 2 years. You gotta be 25 years old, and you're constantly, you go, hey, we're doing some work, and then a year later, you're like, hey, elect me again, right? Very important stuff. It's hard to get elected because elections take money. Okay, we'll talk a little bit about that, more about that later, but the idea is that if I want to run, and I have considered running, how would I get the money to promote myself? Well, first you got to be kind of connected. You either have the money or you got to get it. Now, that was somewhat rhetorical and somewhat like, please, how do I get this money? Because, if I knew how to get the money, I'd have the money, right? Or maybe I know how to get the money, but people are going, yeah, I'm not going to give you any money. I don't like what you have to say or how you look or something like that. Something like that, maybe. So very difficult. Because you got to have money, and there are different ways to get money, and there are people who will, promote your campaign by giving contributions, but in doing so, they expect you to do what? Vote their way. So you, in a sense, become beholden to your campaign donors. And that can become a problem, because what happens with the campaign donors are promoting their guys, and these guys are not exactly representing the people. They're representing this one particular wealthy class of donors. Well, that becomes problematic, doesn't it? Because now these people get, and this is a big debate in the Republican Party over the establishment Republicans, they call them. These establishment Republicans that get big money from big donors, from big political action, campaigns, and they're not really doing what the people want them to do. But you can't get rid of them because the little guy like me can't get enough money to run against them. It's a very difficult thing. So, anyways, so when we talk about the Congress, we can talk about the powers, which we will today. What powers does Congress have? What do they do, and how do they do it? How do they become a congressman? That's a big topic, and we probably won't get to that today as much as I think we're going to leave what I just said until times when we talk about campaigns. We talked about platforms the last time. Remember these? I asked you guys, what are the platforms? What are the issues? What are the issues that the Democratic Party what issues do they support, and what issues do the Republicans support? Okay, so if you're a Democrat, you're pro-life, not pro-life, you're pro-choice. That means you believe it's a person's legal right to have an abortion, okay? And from conception to birth, some are arguing even after birth that somehow if it's a failed abortion, the baby's there, they tried to abort it, the baby came out, and you go, well, what can we do with it now? Some believe you could, still kill it, okay? Well, let's call it a kill her, okay? Because you've got a baby here. It's not an it, it's your chairs. Now, in contrast, the Republican Party is pro-life. They're like, no, all humans have rights. Women are pregnant with humans. Therefore, that human has a right to life. The government has an obligation to secure that right, if you recall. And let's go Second Amendment. Now, the Republicans believe that people have a right to bear arms. That is, to have weapons, to defend their right to life. It's a tertiary right. That we have a right to defend that which is naturally endowed to us by God, our right to life. And if the government is going to tyrannize us, we have a right to defend ourselves against that said tyranny. The left, I call it the left, the Democrats, tend to be a little more restrictive on gun rights. Some of them say, oh yeah, you can have some guns, but we want to get rid of, they use the term sensible gun control, okay? Sensible gun control means we want to get rid of all semi-automatic weapons. Well, that's a vague term because a lot of people don't know what a semi-automatic weapon is. They think machine gun, right? Shooting grenades down range, Rambo, right? How many think that that's what a semi-automatic weapon is? Can somebody tell me what a semi-automatic weapon is? Has anybody in here ever fired a gun?
No.
You have. What'd you fire?
Just like I was like younger, but it was probably just like a pistol or shotgun.
Was it a pistol?
Yeah.
Was it a revolver, the kind that goes around, or was it?
Shot one of those before.
Or did it have a slide that goes back and forth?
One had a revolver, and one had a slide.
Slide. Okay. The one with the slide is a semi-automatic weapon. Okay. A pistol that does not have to be manually cocked, reset, is a semi-automatic weapon. Okay? It automatically reloads a round and cocks itself. Every time you shoot, a slide goes back and pushes a spring back, which pushes the round. There's a spring magazine that pushes a bullet forward, and as the bullet thing goes back, it pushes the bullet back into the chamber, and as that goes back, it does two things. It cocks it and it reloads it, okay? Semi-automatic. The vast majority of people who own a pistol for self-defense in their home have a semi-automatic weapon. So people going, hey, we got to get rid of semi-automatic weapons. What they usually think they're thinking of are machine guns, or AR-15s, which are the civilian equivalent to the military weapon M16. Okay? Difference between AR-15 and M16. M16 has a 3-round burst, okay? Right? And the AR-15 does not, has just single round shots, but that's a semi-automatic long rifle, and a lot of people think that the AR stands for assault rifle. It's Armalite rifle, I think it is. That's the name of the company. Anyway, point being is they want gun control, meaning they want someone, right now there's a bill being passed around. They're trying to have a bill, gun buybacks and confiscation so that they take away people's guns, right, to bear arms, okay? Because they believe, you get things like Sandy Hook, Columbine, and all that. They believe if you get rid of guns, you get rid of gun shooting, okay? You make guns illegal, people won't have guns. People don't have guns, they won't shoot each other. Does that make sense? You make marijuana illegal, people won't have marijuana and people won't smoke it, right? Yeah, okay. Right, okay, see how that works? You make border crossing illegal, people won't cross the border illegal. So just make something illegal is different. But the Democrats are on one side of that debate and the Republicans are on the other. You can tell what side I'm on, okay? Other things, other issues, religious liberty. Should you be able to bake a cake? Say, I'm not going to bake a cake for a wedding between a man and a man because it violates my Christian religious beliefs. Should you have that choice?
Yes.
You say yes. The Democrats say no. The Democrats say, no, we don't care what your religious beliefs are. You cannot say no to a man and a man getting married. You have your business has, your business has to patronize them, and if not, we could punish you. Okay, and there are several court cases that's been done with. Okay, the Democrats believe that you don't have that right. The Republicans believe that you do have that right. Okay, so religious freedom is a big deal for the I say the right. I mean, the right is usually in reference to conservatives. Okay, liberals. And don't confuse that with Lockean liberalism, like free liberalism in the sense of the free exercise of your liberties, okay? Liberalism is, in the small L sense, is different than that, okay? What were some of the other issues? We talked about abortion, gay marriage. Republicans generally oppose gay marriage, same-sex marriage. Democrats are generally for it. Spending. Oh, should the government provide your health care? You say yes or no?
I mean, not fully, but it should at least,
should the government provide your car?
Car?
Yeah, should the government provide your car?
No, that's my.
Why not?
I mean, that's my.
Where's the line, okay, in what the government should provide? And how do you determine it? Well, that's the question. But the Democrats believe that medicine should be socialized and the government should provide us our health care. The Republicans say no to that. They say no because if they do, that will end patient choice. That is, should you be allowed to choose your own doctor? Should you be able to choose your own treatment? Okay? Because when the government gives you something, what does the government do? It governs it, okay? Now, okay, these are some of the issues, and I just want to get back to the legislative branch. These issues are argued and legislated, okay, into law by the legislative branch. The question then is, once these things become law, are they constitutional? Do they violate or uphold the Bill of Rights? The rights that you've been endowed with by God that are specifically stated, written, posited in the Bill of Rights. That's the thing. Does universal health care violate any rights, or does it uphold rights? Some people say health care is a right. Is it? Is it?
It is.
Why? What is a right?
A right is like something that, I don't know how to put it, but like let's say.
Do you remember early on in the class we discussed rights?
Yeah.
These endowments by God?
I got you.
Yes, so did God endow you with the right to health care such that the government has a obligation to give it to you?
Well, the government is there to protect my rights, and the health.
Yeah, okay, so to protect your right to have it, but do they have to give it to you?
Well, they don't have to give it to me.
Like, I mean, you have a right to a gun, correct? Second Amendment?
Yes.
Does the government have an obligation to provide you with one?
No.
Why not?
I mean.
You have a right to it.
Yeah.
If you have a right to it, does the government not have an obligation to give it to you?
No, they don't have an obligation.
Okay, so if you have a right to health care, let's pretend that is true, okay? Does the government have an obligation to give it to you? It's the same question. And if not for guns, then why not? Then why for healthcare? Now that's to debate the topic. That's not the goal of the class, but that is something we should think about, right? Because hey, if you're going to give me healthcare, why don't you hand me some guns too? Hey, I got a right to that too, right? You have a right to a car, no, but you have a right to liberty, free movement, right? Cars are how we do it. Okay. Okay, so these are the things that they're going to fight over, and they also fight over how to spend your money. Now, here's a good example. when we talk about healthcare, if the government is going to provide something for you, do they not also have to pay for it? The answer is yes. And how do they get the money? Taxes. So you're not, what was the acronym I gave you? And I'm going to give it to you almost every time we're here. TINSTAFL. What does TINSTAFL mean? Leah? There is no such thing as a free lunch. That's a test question. I just put it up, okay, on the most recent test. TINSTAFL. There is no such thing as a free lunch. If the government gives it, they must pay for it. If they pay for it, they do not. The government does not make money. They can print money, right? But that's not making money. That's making greenbacks. Money is the value given to the greenbacks, okay? Who makes value? The worker. See, the greenbacks represent a good or a service. The value is, we see that there's value in a good or service, and somebody's willing to give a greenback, a number of greenbacks that somehow, through faith, fiat, represent the value, right, of that work. I will take this much value represented by these greenbacks, and I will give you this work or this good, all right? The government produces nothing. The government takes your work, your greenbacks that you worked for, and spends it. Okay? The legislative branch determines what they're going to take from you. That's one of the things they do. So it's very important to pay attention to what they're saying we want to spend money on. We want to spend money on healthcare. Great. How much is it going to cost? What? It's going to cost that much? Okay? And I get no choice? Why don't you get a choice? Because when the government gives something, the government governs it. Did you go to private school your whole life?
Yeah, pretty much.
So you had some choices. You could have gone down the street or you could have gone across town, right?
Yeah.
Had you gone to a public school, could you have done that? No, you could have gone to the school right down the street. And that's where you would have gone. And not only that, they would have provided you a teacher. And you would have said, I don't like that teacher. And they would have said, I don't care. We're the ones providing it. We make those choices. Leah, did you go to public school?
Public
Did you?
and homeschool.
And homeschool. That's you could have stayed home. That's private school. That's as private as it gets. Okay? So when you went to public school, how much choice did you have?
Not much.
None. When you went to homeschool, how much choice you had? You had all the choice. When you go to class, when you study, actually you had a choice of what textbooks you used and what textbooks you didn't use, correct?
Right.
That's right. You could have used a Christian textbook. You go to a public school, you think they're going to be talking about Christianity? Your parents Christians? Of course they are. That's why they homeschooled you. And they didn't trust the public schools, did they? No, they did not. Neither do I. Okay? I am a product of public schools. I'm not saying I didn't learn anything, but I am telling you, there's a lot of indoctrination I had to get over. Like boys can be girls. Okay? Go ahead.
Yeah, public school.
Public school. In the Congo?
Well, yes, in Congo and here.
And here. Okay. They have public schools in Congo.
Yes.
I know that's weird. I just don't know the Congo. I don't know much about it.
They have.
Okay, but they also have missionary schools out there too, right?
They do, yeah.
Are those better than the public schools or worse?
Better. Public schools are worse.
Of course they are, because when the public gives them, why is that the case? Well, because private schools have to compete, right? It's a private industry, it's a business. And I have to give a better product than the public school, because if not, you're going to go for that which is not, they're already taking the money out. Why would you spend extra to get something worse, right? So the idea is you want to get something better, so the private schools have to compete. So that's, by the way, that's a Republican view of things. What if you live in a town, part of town, that is really horrible? And there's gangs and gun shooting and drugs and violence, my school. Should you have to go to that school, or should the government allow you to go to another school? What do you think?
For safety, I think the government.
If it's your kid, you don't want your kid going to that school, do you?
I don't know.
You do want them to go to school.
No.
Heck no. You want them. So what have you said? Now, by the way, this is very partisan. This is something that they fight over. Okay, going back to the budget. How much do you want to spend? How much is worth it? Now, here's another thing. How about disaster relief? Texas just went through this kind of disaster. We lost a lot of plumbing going on right now, right? A lot of pipes burst. Some people died. All sorts of stuff. And should California pay into a big pot that pays Texas money to get back on its feet? It is us, after all. Well, all we gotta do is convince Congress to take that money from them, right? We don't care what California says, right? What they want. We care if we can just get enough congressmen to vote for this. What about coronavirus? Now, the government has been shut down. The government has told people they cannot work. And because they cannot work, they cannot make money. If you cannot work, you can't make money. If you can't make money, what can't you do? Pay bills, right? You can't pay bills, you get evicted. Your power gets shut off. So the government has said you can't work, you can't make a living. What should happen? Should the government now provide you with a relief? It's crickets in here. What do you think? See, this is what Congress is debating, right? And so they come up with this relief bill, okay? And when they pass this into law, this bill is going to go out, and you guys will get checks. You like money, right? Do you want a check, Leah?
That'd be nice.
You're gonna be paying for that check for some time. Do you want a check? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, of course.
How much are you willing to pay for this $2,600 if that's how much you're getting? You realize you're getting your own money, but you got to pay it. You'll pay it back in taxes. You realize, right?
Yeah.
Okay. You realize that, right? Okay. Just one. I'm going to go through a few things that are in that bill that you might go, wait a minute. Should they actually? I'll do that right now, and then we're going to go through the powers of Congress. Okay. Sign in. All right, besides your money, this is the last bill, and I'll talk about the next one. The last bill was 5,593 pages. That was the budget, okay? And you guys all got a check. Did any of you get a check? Did you guys get a check, or did your parents get a check?
The parents did.
No.
Your parents did. I didn't get a check. And if I did, I don't know where it went, okay? But 169 million goes to Vietnam out of that bill. 190, I said 169 million, I meant. 198 million goes to Bangladesh. 130 million goes to Nepal. Pakistan got 15 million for gender programs. Sri Lanka got 15 million to refurbish a high endurance cutter. It's a boat. $505 million went to Belize, Costa Rica, El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, Nicaragua, and Panama to address factors that contribute to the migration of unaccompanied minors to the United States. 461 million went to Colombia for programs related to counter narcotics and human rights. Wonder what they're gonna do with that. 74 million went to the Caribbean. 33 million for democracy programs in Venezuela. Peru, Curacao, Trinidad, and Tobago got some money. 132 million for assistance in Georgia. 453 million for assistance in the Ukraine. Okay. That was part of a $1.4 trillion bill. What is $1 trillion?
1 billion
lot of money.
times
1 billion times what? 1,000 times 1,000. It's 1,000 billion. What is a billion? 1,000 million. So you have 1,000 millions in 1 trillion, right? You take $1 million. How many of you have $1 million? None of you.
Not yet.
Do you have $1,000 million? That is an extreme amount of money to have $1 billion. And to take that and multiply that by $1,000.
More.
But it's not just $1,000 times, because remember, it's 1.4 trillion dollars. That was the last one. The next one is going to be, I think, a 2.4 or 2.5 trillion dollar one, and somewhere in there, after all the education, the healthcare, the businesses, the relief for small businesses, the stimulus payments that you'll get, you will also be paying certain things such as economic assistance for other countries. Let me see here. 13 billion goes to the Department of the Treasury. I don't know what that's for. Bunch of miscellaneous stuff. Let's see. Some will go to Washington D.C. police officers. No, they will be prohibited from using any of this money. But the Women's History Museum and the National Museum of the American Latino will be created with some of this money. $50 million will go to establish the Nita M. Lowry Middle East Partnership for Peace Fund, which will foster partnerships between Palestinians. Authority, I don't know what that is. Someone goes to Medicaid, various programs related to Tibet. Now, I'm all for free in Tibet, okay? So you see, this is what I'm calling right there. That type of stuff is called pork, okay? And we'll talk a little bit about it. When I got a bill and I want you to jump on board with it, right? And you're like, I'm not going to support your bill unless you support mine, okay? Why don't we just add yours to mine and we'll put it all together, right? So I want to give COVID relief to you and the people here, but you go, well, I got this project I need to be voted on. It's not going to be voted up if it just stands alone. So why don't we put it as part of yours? I go, well, what does giving money to Latino studies do? Female Latino studies. What does that have to do with COVID relief? Nothing. But you know what it does have to do with is me getting your vote and you withholding your vote if you're holding me hostage in a way. Okay? A lot of people are against this. So anyway, so what I'm trying to tell you here is, one, the legislative branch, yes, they make laws, but they also legislate how much money we spend and how much money we commit to. And they also they levy taxes. So those are big deals. So I'm trying to stress to you the importance of what they're putting in these bills, right? I mean, you may be all for women's studies and women Latino studies and building buildings at the Smithsonian Institute, but what does that have to do with COVID? Nothing, right? And so some people might go, that's just kind of, that's pork. A lot of people are really upset at what's called pork barrel spending. I'll tell you the origin of pork barrels later, okay? So, it can appear to the citizen as an abuse of legislative power. Let's talk about these. Just specifically what the Constitution says about this stuff. I have to pull it out of my bag here. This is a PowerPoint that I normally use, and this may actually work, but I'm not going to use it today. I'll put the slides up for you, okay? This is Congress. Congress, as stated, it is a bicameral body. Upper chamber, lower chamber. House of Representatives, there are 435 of them. There are 100 senators. Senators serve for 6 years. Representatives stand for 2 years. You have to be 25 to be a House member. You have to be 30 to be a senator. They have different types of powers. You have two types of powers. You have the Enumerated Powers and the implied powers. An enumerated power is a power that is specifically written out in the Constitution that says, these are your powers. The implied powers are those powers that are implicit to get the job done, right? If you have the power to, vote on laws and create them, it's implied that you have the power to create the rules of the Congress to do so. We'll go over some of those implied powers, okay? Let's talk about the enumerated powers, and I shall talk about them, and I will also put this on the web, like I said, Blackboard. They have the power to lay and collect taxes, okay? Very first, right out of the box, the power to levy taxes. That's exactly what I was just talking about. And the question is, are they taxing for the right things? Are they abusing your money? That's one thing you need to ask. To borrow money on the credit of the United States. That's very important. Our national debt is a big deal because who pays for the national debt? You do. You do, and you may not even know you do. And what happens when the debt becomes more than you make in America or in your household? Then you cannot pay your debt. And what happens when you cannot pay your debts? Your credit worthiness goes down. You can no longer borrow anymore. And that's what, so how do you pay your debts in America? Either. We're trying to pay that, okay?
Yeah.
What happens if we can't pay our debts? And what happens if you're not, see, what does the GDP stand for? Gross domestic product.
Yeah.
That's how much we're creating in here, okay? And then we got our taxes from that, okay? Okay, we tax our people. We need to have enough money from our taxes to pay our bills. And when we don't have enough money to pay our bills, what does the government do? Turns on the printing press. Okay, we owe them $5 trillion. Okay, can't pay it. Can't get it from you because you don't have it, right? Tax you guys too much. You're gonna get mad, right? So what do? I turn on the printing press and I create inflation. What is inflation? It's a hidden tax. It takes the value of your dollar by flooding the market with more greenbacks. Because when you have $1, it's worth a certain amount. When you double that amount of dollars, it cuts the $1 in half, correct? Does that make sense to you?
Yeah.
Okay, you double the amount of greenbacks out there, you cut the value of the greenback in half. But why do they do that? Pay the debts. And so you have inflation, so we can pay our debts. Not a good thing. It could be used in a good way sometimes for those who, if you owe a lot of money, then you start getting a lot of worthless money. But you don't want your dollars to do that. Well, anyway, so they borrow, okay? They regulate commerce with foreign nations. By the way, these first things I'm talking about, in the Articles of Confederation, these were big deals. There was no way to get money for the government under the Articles of Confederation. Nobody was paying anything. They couldn't even finance the war that was going on, that is the Revolutionary War. So the Articles of Confederation were weak in that regard, and so they strengthened our central government by doing this, by giving them the power to lay and collect taxes and to borrow money, and to regulate commerce with foreign nations among several states within and with the Indian tribes. Obviously, there were a lot of with the Articles of Confederation, there were all sorts of treaties and stuff going on with different states. To establish, here it is. Here's a very contentious one too. To establish a uniform rule of naturalization and uniform laws on the subject of bankruptcies throughout the United States. To establish what is naturalization? You should know it, sir, if you want to be a citizen here.
Naturalization?
Yeah, who makes the rules of who becomes a citizen?
Are the government?
Right here. Congress does. Congress does. They make it. Does the president make the rules of who becomes a citizen? No. So can you blame Joe Biden if somebody can't become a citizen? Seems not. It's not his job. His job is to enforce the law, not to make the law. Could you blame Trump for people not becoming citizens? No. It's not his job. Whose job is it? Congresses. We're going through Congress's powers, right? So naturalization, the rules of naturalization are congressional, not the the judicial branch, not the executive branch. They also coin money and regulate the value thereof and of foreign coin and fix the standard of weights and measures. So back when I was 10 years old, they wanted us to go, I think Jimmy Carter was the president, so I would have been a little younger. They wanted us to go to the metric system like the rest of the world, okay? They're all teaching us decimals and meters. And you know what we said? We don't like it here in America. We like our feet, we like our inches, all right? We like stuff like that. We don't like pounds, we don't like kilograms, all right? And so we resist it. Anyway, they could have changed it by law. And you all could have grown up with, I'm gonna go run 5 kilometers today instead of 3.25 miles, all right, or 3.1 miles. To provide for the punishment and counterfeiting of securities, right? We coin money, therefore, if anybody counterfeits it, they can provide for the punishment of that. Here's more these are enumerated powers, powers that are written out, okay? To provide for the punishment of counterfeiting, I just said that. To establish a post office. Now, by the way, people believe that the post office is really irrelevant anymore, that we don't need it because we got UPS, we got FedEx, we got all these carrier services that seem to operate with Amazon Prime, I guess it'd be. They operate making a profit, right? The post office does not make a profit, it operates at a deficit. They lose money. So a lot of people think we should get rid of the post office, okay? They're about to get a whole new fleet of really hybrid vehicles. It's kind of going to be kind of expensive. To whom? Well, to you, the taxpayers, right? Who pays for this? But if you wanted to get rid of the post office, what do? Can the president get rid of the post office? No. Can the judicial branch get rid of the post office? What would it take to get rid of it? It would take an amendment to the Constitution because that is the only business written into the Constitution. Thus, to get rid of it would require a constitutional amendment, which would be very difficult indeed. That's just an interesting fact. Who cares? I mean, I care, but if you're a postal worker, you certainly don't want that to happen. But I think that the postal workers can rest assured their job's going nowhere. Okay? Because nobody's saying, hey, we need to amend the Constitution for this. All right. To promote the progress of science and useful arts by securing limited times authors and inventors the exclusive right to their respective writings and discoveries. Okay? The exclusive right to their writings or discoveries. Copyright law. Are you allowed to make money off of your own inventions?
Yes.
Really? I said that like you're not. Yes, you are. Okay? And that, so imagine you come up with an invention and some other company comes in and just mass produces your invention and they steal all the profits from you. Should you get money for that?
You should, I mean.
That's your invention, right? You have a right to it. They stole your intellectual property, okay? By the way, China's been doing that to us for years. You go to China, they don't buy our goods. What they do is they replicate our stuff out there. They pirate it, okay? Anytime you pirate music, you are violating this right here, okay? Copyright law. Anytime you sell anybody something that you didn't create, that somebody else created, that's copyrighted. They have a right to that. So if I write a song and I steal some melody lines, I run the risk of being sued for any profit I make off that song, right? Because I didn't write it. I stole it. Okay, and that happens. Stairway to Heaven. Anybody heard of it? You know, from Led Zeppelin? One of the most famous songs in the 80s. And so famous that people are like, please stop playing Stairway to Heaven, okay? That's how much they played it. It was kind of ripped off from another group, and they've had to pay money off that. All right. They constitute tribunals to the Supreme Court, inferior and to the Supreme Court, okay? right now, imagine a court, imagine a vacancy on the Supreme Court comes up, and the president nominates, because that's the president's job, somebody to come up to the Supreme Court. They actually hold hearings and vote on whether or not to confirm that. They could say no, and there's been, over the last 3 nominations, there's been a lot of fights going on over it, because Roe versus Wade is hanging in the balance. What's Roe versus Wade? It's a landmark abortion case, okay, that made abortion legal in America. To define and punish piracies and fallacies committed on the high seas. Keep in mind that was a big deal. Still is if you're down by Somalia. To declare war. Can the president declare war? Yes or no? I just read something and I want you to. So one of the enumerated powers of Congress is to declare war. Then I asked you a question. Can the president declare war? The answer is no, it's Congress's job. So if the president wants to go to war, what does he do? He asks Congress to declare war. So when Pearl Harbor was bombed, the president went to Congress and said, hey, we were viciously and unprovoked, there was a vicious and unprovoked attack on us. We need to respond to Japan and declare war on them. And what did Congress say? Yes, okay, sure. And they declared war. They declared war. He executes it because the president is the commander-in-chief of the military, but he does not declare war. Congress declares war. To raise and support armies. To provide and maintain a navy. To make rules for government and regulation of the land and naval forces. To provide for the calling of the militia, to execute the laws of the Union, suppress insurrections. Interesting. Let's stop right there. Was there an insurrection last month at the Capitol building? I don't know. It depends on how you I guess it depends on how you define insurrection. But if it was an insurrection, whose job would it have been to provide for the calling of the militia? What branch of government am I reading about right now?
Congress.
That's right. So it would have been theirs, right? Whose job would it have been to repel that quote insurrection?
The Congress.
The Congress. Okay. Okay. Did they do anything? Right now we have a bunch of guardsmen out there, but there's nothing really happening, right? They're just standing there going, okay, we erected a fence, okay? But prior to that, what could they have done? This is a big, they had a hearing the other day, and the guys were saying, look, we wanted the National Guard there. Even Donald Trump said the National Guard should have been there. And they said what? No. Okay? So they asked for it, they didn't get it. An alleged insurrection took place. Who's to blame for that not being repelled or prevented? Well, whose job is it?
The Congress.
Thank you. Congress. All right. Provide for the organization, army, and disciplining of militia. So basically, they provide our military to exercise exclusive legislation in all cases whatsoever over such district not exceeding 10 square miles. We're talking about the D.C., right? As made by session of particular states and the acceptance of Congress become a seat of the government of the United States, and to exercise all likely authority over places purchased by the consent of the legislature of the state in which the same shall be for election of forts, magazines, arsenals, dockyards, and other needful buildings. And finally, to make, and this is probably a test question, to make all laws which shall be necessary and proper. This is called the necessary and proper clause. To make all laws which shall be necessary and proper for the carrying out into execution and foregoing powers and all other powers vested by this Constitution and the government of the United States or any department or office there. So those are the, you have the enumerated powers, and then you have the necessary and proper clause that says you need to make any law that is required for you to get your job done, right? It doesn't have to be enumerated, but it needs to be necessary and proper to the task of which you have been given. So you're allowed to make those laws. Now, there are implied powers of Congress. These implied powers are implicit in what's being said. An implied power is a power that Congress exercises despite not being expressly granted by Article 1, Section 8 of the United States Constitution. These powers come from the Constitution's elastic clause, which grants Congress power to pass any laws considered, here it is again, necessary and proper for effectively exercising its enumerated powers. So the necessary and proper clause is also known as the elastic clause. Laws enacted under the implied powers doctrine and justified by the elastic clause are often controversial and hotly debated. Of course they are, because they're not implied. But they will say, well, we got to do this, because if we don't do this, we won't be able to do that. And the other side's going, no, you're just doing that because it's partisan, and you're just doing what your side wants, right? And they start fighting back and forth. And it doesn't matter which side does it. They both do it. Okay, so this is some, gun control laws is an example of this, right? It's clearly controversial, and one side is saying, well, it's implied that we have a right to do this in order to, do other things. So they've done so, and they've tried to limit the sale or possession of firearms. One of the things they try to do now, limit magazine size, what you can put in your gun, capacity. They also say you can't have, some people would say we should just get rid of, we can't stop from selling firearms, but how about this? Maybe we'll make bullets illegal. It's like saying, yeah, you have all the cars you want, but you're not going to have any gas to put in it. Makes it useless, doesn't it? Minimum wage, okay? Is this an implied power, and on what grounds would you justify it? Well, they do it by justifying the Commerce Clause of the Constitution, and they would suggest that we should raise minimum wage. Should we raise minimum wage? We talked about this the other day. Now, nowhere in the Constitution does it say that Congress should set wages. Now, should it? Does it, I should say. No, it doesn't. But they would say, well, it's implied in there that we can do so when operating under the Commerce Clause. Now, I think that's, wow, all right. Income tax. Well, is income tax in the Constitution? No. But taxes are. And if they have the right to levy taxes, well, how they do so is up to them, right? The elastic clause gives them anything necessary and proper to collect these taxes. And so they go, it's necessary to create I disagree that it's necessary, but it may be proper. I don't know if it's proper either, but I would say it's neither necessary nor proper, but they would say it's necessary and proper to create an income tax to levy taxes, because if we don't, we won't have money. Well, I'd say no, it's not necessary. You can go with a consumption tax, okay? What's a consumption tax? You put it on, let's say, gasoline. Gasoline, most of the price of gasoline is taxes, right? So you go, if you own a car, you put gas in your car. Every time you consume gasoline, you're paying taxes, right? You don't want to pay taxes? Well, then don't drive. You want to drive? You're going to be paying your taxes. How about, they have things like sin taxes, like you go gamble or something, win money, and they tax the heck out of you, or tobacco, or alcohol. Those are sin taxes, right? You go drink a bunch of booze, they put a high tax on that. You're consuming your booze, but at the same time, you're also paying the government as you consume your beer. All right? Smoke your cigars and your cigarettes. That's why selling cigarettes, there are people who sell cigarettes. But there's a guy who was killed, very controversial, black guy was killed by the police. They choked him out, right? and then as they were doing it, he was kind of a big guy, and he died of a heart attack. And then, so these police officers, they got sued as New York City, and riots took place, or at least marches, and people were mad, and police brutality, and understandable if people die when the police are trying to arrest them. Why was he being arrested? He was selling cigarettes, and he'd been caught before. He was selling cigarettes, like black market cigarettes. There's a market, they do this, that were not taxed. So he could sell these cigarettes for like $1 a pack instead of like $5 a pack. So he is actually, what he was really doing is evading the taxes. So they were arresting him in a sense for tax evasion, a type of tax evasion. But that's a consumption tax. They put it on those products, okay? So it's not necessary to have an income tax, but it is necessary to have taxes if you're going to pay for things, right? So they got to figure out how to do it somehow, right? So a lot of people don't like the income tax, but that would be an example of them using their implied powers to raise taxes. The military draft. Have you wouldn't have, but have you yet signed up for selective service?
Yes.
The draft.
Yeah.
Have you? You know why? Because young ladies are not required to. Is that fair? Is that equitable? That she gets to have all the same rights you do, but she has no obligation to protect them?
Oh. I mean, no.
No? So Leia should pick up her gun, stand beside you in a fighting hall? Leia's like, yeah, you guys can have your rights.
Okay, thank you.
Right? I heard a great joke. Not really a joke. Guy's ranting about women's rights. He says, look, you're mad that we get $1 more an hour. He says, hey, I don't hear anybody complaining when there's a burning building and everybody's saying women and children first, right? Like the women are like, that's just sexist, right? If the legislative branch, one of their enumerated powers is to raise an army, it is implied that they have to come up with the means to do so. And if nobody is volunteering, which they are now, we volunteer, so we have an all-volunteer military. If we don't have enough people volunteering to get the tasks done, whether it be going to war or to protect our borders or to protect our nation, right? Then what do we have to do? We got to create a military somehow, and then we draft. Okay? We actually say, you, unless you got a good excuse, come on. All right? Now, I was in the military. I was volunteer. Okay? But, in Vietnam, prior to Vietnam, I think Vietnam was the last war we drafted people. I think it'd be good for all men, young men, to join the military. Okay? You get a sense of duty, sense of honor, sense of dignity, and that you actually stood up to defend that which you practiced, your free rights that God gave you. You defended rights that God gave you. You not only defended your rights, you defended the rights of others. So it's very selfless. So I think it's a good thing. It builds character. But the point is, it's not an enumerated power. It is an implied power that they are allowed to do so because it's necessary to build up a military sometimes. And it would be proper to do so if nobody was actually volunteering. All right? Now, I just want to say, with all of this, any spending bill has to originate in the House. So it is Congress's job to what? Raise taxes. So any bill that says we want to raise money has to start in the House. Start with the people's house, okay? We have just run out of time, and I'm going to end it right there.